بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. Dear viewers, respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all of your a'mal and good deeds in this blessed and holy month of Ramadan. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam is somebody who we just commemorated just a few nights ago. But the reality is, no matter how much we discuss and talk about the legacy and life of this great man and this great Imam, it will never be enough, and there will still be more to discuss. That being said, taking advantage of the few nights left of the month of Ramadan, we'll be discussing a beautiful topic tonight, inshallah, and that's on the governance system of Amir al-Mu'mineen al-Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, with our respected guest, Samahat al-Sheikh Adam Awada. Shaykhana, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
Ahlan wa sahlan. And without further ado, Samahat al-Sheikh, please.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء وأعز المرسلين وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين واللعن الدائم المؤبد على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, وَإِذَا حَكَمْتُمْ بَيْنَ النَّاسِ فَحْكُمُوا بِالْعَدْلِ. And when you judge between people, judge with fairness. Now the word hukum, وَإِذَا حَكَمْتُمْ in Arabic, has a broader meaning than the word judge, as in a judge and a jury and someone who is convicted of a crime. Al-Hukum could be giving a ruling, either religious or other. A Hukum could be giving a judgment, as I mentioned earlier. A Hukum could be ruling over a nation, over a people, over a tribe, being given any sort of power, of dominance. A Hukum could be in a household. A father is a Hakim, if we would speak in general sense, of his own household. فَإِذَا حَكَمْتُمْ فَحْكُمُوا بِالْعَدْلِ. This hukum must be in adl, in justice. Now the literal meaning of justice, if we're going to translate the Arabic language, translate the Arabic word justice and go to a dictionary, the meaning is, it says, إِعْطَاءُ كُلُّ ذِي حَقٍّ حَقَّهُ. To give everyone, to give every human, every person who has a due right, give them their right. To give every right to those who it is due to. إِعْطَاءُ كُلُّ ذِي حَقٍّ حَقَّهُ. However, when we mention Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam, when we mention politics, when we mention economy, when we mention financial resources, how is it possible for any ruler, for any governor, for any leader to know 100%, or at least have itmi'nan, have this sense of inner belief that I am just, I am being just, I am ruling with justice? Now, as we believe, Islam and the Holy Quran are a religion and a book, and the Holy Prophet a prophet and his teachings that are eternal. From the day the Holy Prophet received message of the Holy Quran till the day of judgment, there is no in-between fill-ups. So the Ahlulbayt alayhim salam for certain left us with rulings, with guidance to evaluate ourselves, to evaluate our judgment, our leading. So what are these requirements? What are these indicators that we have to place, we have to install, full-time indicators to know that we are ruling with justice, that what we are doing is just in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When I mean just, I don't mean just me as a person, as a human being. When we are talking about a leadership and ruling of any sort, even over a community, being the Imam of a community, it's not just the ruler himself, but rather the ruling system. Now any sane system, now any up-to-date system, now any system in place may be in place or may be put into place by a ruler. ولكن may be put into place by a ruler, but this ruler must set up a system, must set up a government to produce a just society and you just members of this society to justly rule this. Unless, of course, it's a dictatorship. He'll just pass it on to his nearest of kin. Now, in fiqh, in jurisprudence, when the word adala is used, just, he who is adil, that is a just man. We often hear the word adala. For example, a marja must be adil. The imam of salat must be adil. A witness in the court to give his testimony must be adil. Now, of course, the marja and the witness and the imam, it's not the same type of adil. Yes, it's similar in a sense, but it gets more and more intense as the ranks rise and as the position of this person becomes loftier. The adala in fiqh, if we're going to squeeze it into a sentence, it's basically this: عدم ارتكاب الكبائر وعدم الإصرار على الصغائر. To not enjoin in the greater sins and to not proceed and to not, persevere and continue in the smaller sins. Now, of course, we all know kaba'ir and saghair. For example, kaba'ir may be zina, maybe the drinking of alcohol, saghair may be smaller sins. So to make sure this person is adil, he must not be committing these large sins and be trying at his fullest to abstain from the smaller sins. Now, in a political ruling system or in a system of government or in a system of leadership, there must be some sort of philosophy behind this leadership. I mean, isn't it the leader, they say in the Arabic example, الناس على دين ملوكهم, people are of the religion of their rulers, of their kings. Each ruler must state or must put in place a system of rulership based on some sort of philosophy at least. Maybe economical, maybe religious, it may be, I don't know, social, communist. It has to be some sort of leadership. There has to be some sort of hierarchy with some sort of philosophy behind it. Now, society produces these rulers, yes, and the system of government determines the mindset, determines the personalities, determines the thought of those who it is ruling. Now, I'll give 3 quick examples from history. Al-Hajjaj ibn Yusuf Thaqif, for example. When Hajjaj was ruling, historians narrate that people would wake up in the morning and ask each other, Man qutil al-bariha, who was killed yesterday? Man sulib al-bariha, who was crucified yesterday? Man sujina al-bariha, who was imprisoned yesterday? Because the system of government set up by Hisham al-Hakam, Hajjaj ibn Yusuf Thaqafi, the system of government was one which was tyrannical, which was very gruesome, very bloody, so it was part of day-to-day life, and then they got used to it. Systems, or just recently, governments were of the same caliber or of the same status. It was one's goal, day-to-day goal in life, was to keep my head on my body and to not. For example, Al-Walid ibn Hisham, and that's where Hisham came from. Al-Walid ibn Hisham was very economical, was very about money. It was all about the economy and making wealth. And so the day-to-day discussions of his people, of those who ruled, was, as the narrations say in history, شق الأنهار وغرس الأشجار, irrigation systems and the plantation of gardens and farms and the buildings and factories and how much money was made and how much industry there is and selling it and whatnot. So his system of government was based on a philosophy which was a financial philosophy, a worldly philosophy, gain, financial gain. So people tended to move his way. وَالنَّاسُ عَلَى دِينِ مُلُوكِهِمْ, as we said. Sulaiman ibn Abd al-Malik, for example, and that's the third example, was known, was an Abbasi leader, time the Abbasi time. So Sulaiman was a worldly leader, all about food, drink, alcohol, women, slaves, land, buying, selling. So in his ruling, or the time he ruled, or his rulership, people tended to move the way he moved. People tended to act the way he acted. Why? Because the ruler and the ruling system imposed this form of government on their state. So let's look just briefly, wherever we have time, into the indicators put in place by Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam to maintain a just government, to maintain a rightful, a government of adal, Hukm Ali ibn Abi Talib. And that's why when some non-Shia historians look at the personality of Imam Ali alayhi salam, they say that قتله أو قتل أمير المؤمنين عدل. That what killed Amir al-Mu'mineen, what was the reason behind Amir al-Mu'mineen's martyrdom, was he was too just. We know, for example, that the Imam, Salamullahi alayh, knew that Abd al-Rahman ibn Muljam al-Muradi was his killer. And he was asked, why don't you take his life, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen? If you're certain and you have ilm al-ghayb and you know he's your killer and you're going to die in his hands, then take his life as a child and not let him grow to that state and commit such a sin. The Imam said, وَهَلْ يَجُوزُ الْقِصَاصُ قَبْلَ الْجِنَايَةِ? And is it permissible for me to punish someone who has not committed the sin yet? The cliche of Imam Ali alayhi salam's justice, and it's a mindset, it's instilled in all of our minds, is correct, but it's got an addition. And this cliche says that Imam Ali alayhi salam would alight the pulpit and would give sermons and lectures day in, day out. عباد الله أوصيكم وأوصي نفسي بتقوى الله. O worshippers of Allah, servants of Allah, have piety, righteousness, justness, no to, for example, tyranny, no to oppression. That's correct. Imam Ali alayhi salam would preach with his tongue, would preach on the minbar. But off the minbar, the Imam alayhi salam would put his words into actions, would lead by example when it came to a just rulership. Imam Ali alayhi salam ruled for just over 4 years, or just 4 years, if you want to give and take months. The Imam ruled this period of time the way he pleased, the way he wished, the way Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala willed. And he set an example that there were rulers that came before me, and there will be rulers that will come after me. Hukumat Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, this governor or governance or government of Ali ibn Abi Talib, was different. It was none like anything we have seen before. He who wishes to rule people, he who wishes to, من نصب نفسه, as the hadith says, من نصب نفسه للناس إماما. He who wishes to rule people, he who wishes to be an imam, a leader, has to have two clear images. Number one, he has to have a clear image of himself, know who he is and where he's going. Now, it's not just a leader's job to live the life and live in a palace and enjoy the riches of life. It's a leader's job to lead. This leading means that you have to have a zoom out of the society you're in, have an eye out to the future, and make sure that this philosophy that you set up your government to achieve or to instill is on the right path. He who wishes to rule people must have a clear image of himself, and he who wishes to rule people must have a perception of society that is somewhat realistic. One may perceive society to be the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as a Christian may put it, the lambs of God. And one may perceive society, an unjust ruler may perceive society to be rubbish. Numbers. A way for me to make money, a way for me to instill my power, inflict my pain on others. According to these two things, these two images that one must paint for himself, a philosophy arouses. Something must be derived from there. We'll give an example for him. Saddam Hussein, now that he's gone. The system of government Saddam had, he perceived himself to be the greatest ruler of the Arabs. Perceived or had an image of his people to be something other than what Imam Ali alayhi salam saw his people to be. It was okay to be a tyrant, it was okay to mistreat, it was okay to, because these people were pawns, stepping stones, to step from one pawn to another, one step to another to reach your goal. People had no worth. Imam Ali alayhi salam saw these people as the people of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as the worshippers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as a judge, as an exam with a judge overlooking. In Arabic, they say, al-masuliyya, this governance you're given, this rulership you're given, taklif wa laysa tashrif. It's something that you will be judged for. It's something you were given and you will be watched and you will be judged. It's not in this world or in the hereafter. Wa laysa tashrif. It's not something just to celebrate yourself. And all humans agree that there is a necessity in dividing society. One may divide society, for example, on the basis of economy or economics. One may divide society on the basis of skin color. One may divide society, I'm talking ruler, may divide society in favor, a certain denomination. But everyone agrees that there must be some sort of slice and dice to society so that some sort of hierarchy may be managed, may be put together. And these groups have a base. These groups, sometimes they're either black or white and there is the gray in the middle. But there is some sort of base, some sort of denominator put into practice. For example, one mind view, one viewpoint, one worldview is the economic classes, where you have the wealthy, the bourgeoisie, the soldiers and what have you, and then you have the peasantry. And that's known for thousands of years, since the time of the pharaohs, maybe even before. In other societies, for example, you have civil servants, and the civil servant who serves his society better is of more of a lofty position or rank. So, for example, a janitor, a doctor, a pilot, a soldier, they're all of ranks or weighty positions in the society. Why? Because they serve the public interest. And there are two forms of governance. Now there's a third viewpoint which is mixing the two together. Let's take a group who are public servants and who are wealthy public servants. We make them the elite of society, and then we work our way down. For example, judges. A judge is wealthy, a judge is of a lofty position, and a judge is a public servant. So we'll make our own hierarchy, which is a mix between the two, and rule people with that man. Imam Ali alayhi salam was none of the three. Imam Ali based his rulership, first of all, not on levels, or even financial or social, but rather on a basis of categories. He categorized people. So no class, categories. And the pinnacle point and the main attribute he was looking for in every single member of this society and every single category was taqwa, piety, fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the Holy Quran. Piety was what got you where you wanted to get with Amir al-Mu'minin sallallahu alayhi. It wasn't money, it wasn't education, it wasn't status of society, status of family, clan. No, it was taqwa. I mean, who was the family of Salman al-Faris? They weren't known. back in Meccan or Medini days, he was a nobody. Abu Dhar, Miqdad, so on and so forth. Now, people quickly realized that these devices or these divisions of society would cause some sort of social clash. These poor servants or these less working social servants would at some stage be fed up. Fed up with being mistreated, fed up with being at the bottom of the food chain, fed up. So they invented something called social security. Well, mashallah, there's social security. The government pays us something. The government, in some countries pays for part of our healthcare, some sort of free school system or schooling education. This was made so that a minimal amount of friction would occur between the ruling class, the elite, the bourgeoisie, and the rest of society. And it was a trial and error. So basically in Western societies, it's a trial and error. They amend laws, they put into place laws, they remove laws, depending on where they want to get in society and what kind of society they are or they plan to bring or plan for in the future. Imam Ali was a man who was planting seeds in a society, who was a man farming society, basically like trimming hedges. And there was only one goal, one reason Imam Ali would do what he was doing. And that was, it was his taklif, it was his duty set upon him by God. So there's no day of slack, day of taking a day off. Imam Ali alayhi salam was planning for the future of Islam. One was asked, and I was watching something the other day, and he said, how did Tashayyur get to Morocco and that area, Algeria, Morocco? And the answer was stunning. There was two students of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, whom he taught well, whom he raised well, and then he sent to modern-day Tunisia. And he didn't give them any specific task. He gave them a bag of money each. He said, go buy yourself land, farming land of course, and live amongst these people. And of course, and bring forth the love for the Ahlulbayt alayhim salam. Call towards the path of the Ahlulbayt alayhim salam with other than your tongue. And they lived there and they resided there. Until it came time for another descendant of the Imams, a descendant of the Imams to go to that particular area and reside there after the incident of Fakh, where the Ahlulbayt alayhim salam were persecuted again after Karbala. And when arrived, and upon arrival, he found himself to be in a Shia society. What was the reason? The reason was this: the way the Imam perceived himself and the way he saw others and the way he raised others, and what was the purpose and the philosophy behind this society of the Imam. Meaning the Imam Ali alayhi salam ruled, or the Imam Sadiq alayhi salam without a government. He was still a leader, he was still followed. In the Imam's famous letter to Malik al-Ashtar, he spoke about the particularities of each and every political, social, economical group in society. And he gave Malik the specific orders, a doctrine to follow like a recipe in a cake of how to deal with every single people, with every group of people. All were equal in the eyes of the system. All were equal in the eyes of the system, and the Imam alayhi salam made sure that it was ethics, and ethics alone, which he based his government around. Now, ethics is not enough. You have to implement laws to maintain these ethics, because when there's no law, humans turn to animals and society turns to a jungle. So the Imam ﷺ based his laws on the ethics of Islam. That's still point number one. The Imam based his laws upon the ethics. So he looked for an ethical group, set this ethical group into authority, and was a watchful eye over these people, and set other people to watch these and make sure they maintain their ethics in their dealings, in their system of government, and in placed laws. So he who was an ethical man, who gained a position in power, number one, was not allowed to own his own business, period. No business. Because if you have your own business and you're in a position of power, you're going to use your power in some way or another to gain. And if you gain, other people want to gain, and then you do favors for your friends, and then it becomes the Middle East. No business. You cannot love for your brother in faith what you love for yourself. If there is buying and selling, if there is profit and loss, the only way you love for your brother which you love for yourself is if all that is in your heart is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you're not, as a ruling or a minister or a leader of some sort, and you're not allowed by law, punishable by law, to set up your own business. Your income comes solely from the government, and you cannot be biased in any way, shape or form. You have no reason to, number one, and there are watchful eyes over you. You can't set up a pious government and then stand back as an imam and let this pious government stay pious. No. A pious government must be set up, and the imam must watch over carefully. For example, Bayt Mal al-Muslimin. Bayt Mal al-Muslimin was the Islamic treasury at the time. The imam used to sit inside it, count it daily, and distribute daily. And then he'd sweep it up and close the door behind him. None of this piling of cash, as others did before and after Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam. So there was nothing to take. كُلُّ ذِي حَقٍّ حَقَّ, giving every due right to everyone. So the first indicator put in by Amir al-Mu'minin alayhi salam was this horizontal society. No one was above anyone else. It was taqwa which raised your status and lowered your status. More taqwa, more status. Less taqwa, less status. And the Imam, Ma'soom, leader, watchful eye on top of all. The Imam had this is also to add to the eyes of the Imam alayhi salam. He didn't just use his eyes and put asas, watch people over, watchmen over the government. No. There was no buffer zone between the Imam and the people. Not like anybody we know today. I mean, there's buffer zones between people themselves, let alone rulers and leaders. There was no buffer zone. There was no middleman. They call it a mediator. There was no one in the middle. The Imam had a place just like Bayt al-Mal, which is a room. He had something called Bayt al-Qasas, a room made specifically with a window that you threw bits of paper inside. You had anything to say to the Imam, you'd write a bit of paper and you'd throw it inside this room. The Imam would come daily, open the door, take these papers, read what had happened, understand, have a full understanding of society, because society itself was speaking to Amir al-Mu'minin. If you had any sort of shame, you wouldn't stand and beg in public. And a lot of people did at the time. So they would write to the Imam. It was the person in need would write direct to the Imam, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was their witness. What kind of government? Bayt al-Qasas was this. Was the Imam's personal email. Would be read by nobody. Would be seen by nobody. No matter how pious and how close they were to Amir al-Mu'minin. not just ask for favors from Amir al-Mu'mineen and from the ruler and explain. No. The Imam even allowed the people to show any injustice that was happening, no matter how close this person was to Amir al-Mu'mineen, without fear of persecution. Now, anybody, you want to raise any sort of complaint, you fear persecution by that person if they are closer to the Amir than you are. The Imam had nobody close. No one was a referee. The Imam was the judge, and everyone else must be judged. And the Imam will judge himself, of course, with no need for anyone to judge the Imam. That's number one. Number two, a neutral justice system or judiciary system. Neutral. The Imam, upon gaining the leadership and the power of the government of Islam at the time, placed men who he knew were learned and pious and had all the prerequisites as judges to judge, to be the mediators for any dispute in public, but made sure to put them in a position where nobody could affect them in any sort of way. As my understanding, the Imam al-Islam was the first to pay judges well. It's only now, for example, in some societies or many societies that they pay a judge well so that he isn't bribed. The Imam al-Islam paid them well and ordered all of his wulat, his governors, to pay the judges well. And to not keep anybody closer to themselves than the judges. So that the judge also would not fear persecution if something was raised. If an issue was raised to be discussed and it harmed one of the entourage of the wali or of the Imam, it was the judge to the Imam directly. He paid them well. He oversaw their rulings. And he was advised by none other than these judges. So the advisors of every wali, the Imam said to Malik and to others other than Malik, Muhammad ibn Abi Bakr, be advised by the judges and keep them to the closest possible to yourself. Give them a rank, he says. Give them a rank that nobody can aspire to achieve. So no matter how close you became with this wali, with this hakim, this ruler, no matter how chummy you got, the judge was always closer. It was the judge who would spend the evening with this wali discussing political and social issues, not his friends. Now, funny enough, we all know of Haman and Fir'aun. Haman was Fir'aun's personal banker. Haman was Fir'aun's friend. Haman, the central bank, he owned it. So Fir'aun had the power, Haman had the money. It was impossible for Fir'aun to say no to Haman because Haman was funding Fir'aun's government, Fir'aun's rule over people. Haman was more switched on than Fir'aun. Fir'aun was once preoccupied doing something. Someone wanted to come and speak to Fir'aun about Haman's tyranny or mistreatment of people. He tried to enter. Haman said, no, stop, you can't come in. Why? He said, Fir'aun is God. Okay, and he's busy now creating things and beings. So as soon as he's finished, I'll call you, leave. And this man went on his way. Fir'aun came out. When you lie to someone and lie to someone over and over and over again, you begin to believe this lie. He came out, stretching. He said, what's wrong? Why are you tired? He goes, creating is a tough job. I was creating cows. I think the narration says I was creating cows. And Haman says, no, you weren't. I made up the story. I called you God because it was a financial gain. And there came the quote in Arabic, when someone wants to make up something and he's not telling the truth, you tell him, Ala Haman ya Fir'aun. Pharaoh, it's me, Haman. those who are kept close, the wealthy who are kept close to the ruling class or the political class, that's a mix. That's a mixture that will only end in chaos, bribery, facade. No state is more corrupt, brothers and sisters, than a state that is. No state is more corrupt than a state that is run by the bankers themselves. No state is more corrupt than a state that is run by people who have businesses on the ground. Barred that completely. Anyone who had any sort of power had no financial gain whatsoever. If it was proven to have something, he was gone. There was none of this. There was none of this chumminess, none of this love or this romance between the financial rulers of a country and the political rulers of the country, as we see now. Most of our, I can say for at least our countries in the East, Arab and Muslim countries. And number three, I'll try to wrap up with this, although there's many more to discuss. As we said, number one was the division of society based on piety in placing laws. Number two, a free judiciary system with no one able to put pressure on the judges. Number three, seeking out the marginalized in society. Now, there are poor, and there are poor. Poverty is something, and someone being so poor with such great akhlaq and ethics, يحسبهم الجاهل أغنياء. He who is ignorant will think they're wealthy people, or they're at least doing okay for themselves. They're middle class. Why? Because they have the akhlaq. They have the belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They have enough morality to not wipe the floor with themselves when they're begging. The Imam set up committees to go out and find these people. The Imam didn't wait for people to come to him and walk in and say, Ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, tear my clothes apart. The Imam would go out looking for the poor. The Imam would go out looking for these marginalized groups in society, and they exist. Wallahi, they exist. I know families, for example, that have one meal a day in societies which you look around at face value and you think it's doing well for itself. One meal a day. I'm not talking about third world countries with bad situations. There is no food, it's fine. I'm talking about Western, democratic, supposedly first world, or what they call them, established countries, who have one meal a day. He made committees of just men. Just men plus another attribute, tawadu, being down to earth. There may be someone who is just, but this just person is probably have some sort of belief in themselves that they are something they're not, to be kind. No, just down to earth men and women who would go out and seek out, just like you go fishing, for these poor marginalized who don't come out and scream poverty, and he would go and help them. So the ruling is, don't wait for them to go to you, as the Imam says, you go to them. For you are responsible on the day of judgment. And you will become to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day of judgment, maghlul al-yadayn, tied up as a ruler. So let's not take this lightly, brothers and sisters. To he who rules, she who rules, she who takes charge, he who takes charge, be very careful. For even the smallest of small mistakes may hold you up on the day of judgment. Man kasara mu'min, the hadith says, فَعَلَيْهِ جَبْرُهُ. He who breaks a mu'min, not literally breaks, maybe hurts a mu'min with a word, must mend that mu'min, or else he'll be waiting in line on the day of judgment. We're nearing the end of the holy month of Shahr Ramadan. I've just been informed there are 5 minutes to go. It's the last few nights. Let's take these nights seriously. Let's reflect in these coming few nights. The clock's ticking. The doors of shaitan will be open again. Let's make the most of these nights, whether reciting Quran or dua or salawat. Man tatawwa bi salat, the Imam says, or the Prophet ﷺ says, he who recommends, he who does or performs a recommended salat, prayer, is a bara'a min al-nar, is an exit strategy from hell in this holy month. So I urge you, brothers and sisters, I'm reminding myself and I'm reminding every single one of you to have fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ittaqullah, and to make sure that we do not die illa wa nahnu muslimun, that we are surely Muslims. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin.
أحسنتم سماحة الشيخ, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq to keep that in mind, especially these last few months of Ramadan, last few nights of the month of Ramadan, and perhaps, God forbid, but perhaps this is, and this might be the last month of our Ramadan in our lives, God forbid, but taking advantage of these nights while they last and maximizing our benefit from them, inshallah. So the governance system of Amir al-Mu'minin salam was one of justice, was one that emphasized on taqwa and on piety, and was one that the Imam alayhi afdalu salatu wassalam was so accessible to the people and was always there to address their problems, and was not distancing himself from the civilians, which is unlike what we have seen in perhaps every single government in history besides the ones of the prophets and of the Imams, and something that we are in dire need of today, especially for anybody who is thinking of or who is in a position of rule. They must keep in mind the rule of Amir al-Mu'minin salam and the standards and the principles by which he ruled. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us tawfiq to follow in the footsteps of the Imam in every single aspect of life. Samahat Sheikh, thank you so much for coming on tonight.
Thank you very much for having me.
Of course. And thank you so much, viewers, for tuning in. That is us for tonight, inshallah. Please keep us in your du'as. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.